Don't wear stuff you don't want to sweat through. Because we come to stand in God's presence. Daniel fell in God's presence. John fell in God's presence. Those trying to capture him fell in God's presence. And we just come to worship the Lord and to celebrate him. To really celebrate him. Listen, I know that what we do as unto God. But listen, it's one thing to have natural abilities. It's another to yield it to the Lord. And we just take it as a given that we have skilled musicians and skilled singers. But they yield their gifts to the Lord, and they're walking with God, and they love God. And I really just celebrate God for our choir members, for our choir directors, for our musicians. I really do. I really do. For all the musicians and the singers, just thank you for helping to take us to God's presence the way you were called to do that. Because you could be doing anything with your talent and with your ability, but you're really serving and you're honoring God. Life is about evaluation. In so many areas of our lives, we understand whether we're on track for what we want to do or become. Students, if you don't, you should know if you're on track to graduate. And if you're not, you might want to know that too. When I was in past jobs, when I was a recruiter for UW-Madison, I was an academic advisor for a number of years in the School of Pharmacy. And the efficacy of my role can be measured. The students apply once you recruit them. Did they stay in good standing? Did they graduate? You could easily look at numbers to see if that was successful. My first job out of school was in retail management. You can tell if I did a good job by increased sales. Did new customers come in the store? Did the ads work? Did sales go up the way you wanted them to? If any of you have ever worked in banking, I used to be a bank teller in another life. Did your drawer balance? You got in trouble if it was over. The bank made money. You got in big trouble if your drawer was shut or short. That means you made money. So that's the assumption. It could be that anybody else did it, but the assumption might be you made some money. As a student, it was evaluated on my grades, and not just my grades, because sometimes it was just grades, but if it was a course that built on others, it was really the mastery of the material. Because there were some courses you just wanted to pass because you would never see that junk again. No offense to math people, but do you remember when you took your last required math class? I started singing Oh Happy Day right in Bascom, right in front of room, what is it, 252, 262, 165, one of them big rooms. Say, I don't have to study war no more. It was no longer about mastery because nothing was going to build on that. It was just about graduation. It was the cap and the gown and what nobody counting on commencement day. But yet when I became a new minister, a pastor, I was given very few tools on how to evaluate whether or not we were doing a good job as a ministry. We talked a lot about getting a facility. When we come out of this living room and get a building, then we'll be a real church. Was that the measurement of success? Was it numbers? Because numbers mean dollar signs. And I don't mean we milk people for, but I mean the more people you have, the more likely people are to contribute. And so it means resources. Is that it? Or it could be a move of the Spirit. So on days we had no facility and we had no numbers, but the Spirit moved, it was successful. Then there's some place where there's no tangible move of the Spirit. Numbers might be so-so, but the facility is great. And some folks are worshiping outside by choice. I was at a conference in Detroit, and there were people having church in a parking lot. It's like Lake Street Ramp, like on the top. They had the screen, the projector. I mean, they were having church. We were outside saying, where's that noise coming from? Where's that? I thought I was being extra spiritual. It was my first covenant conference. I thought these people are really saved. I hear music in the air up over my head. And I looked across from where we were, and I could see, I think it must have been a young church. It might have been a college group. I'm not sure. It was summer, so it probably was a young church. They didn't have facilities. They had decent numbers, the move of the Spirit. The whole idea of this vitality thing that we're talking about, this checkup, the reason we had Dr. Zapata do what she did is because we don't live and act as if there's a real evaluation of the church. Because with an evaluation is an assessment. You have to evaluate. That's the diagnostic part. That's why she said, well, we'll turn the results into Dr. G and we'll find out what's going on. Because just doing an examination, gathering information is one thing. But then making the diagnosis, this is what we need to do. This is what's going to happen. What is prescribed? That is really important. And many of us live as if there's not going to be a reckoning, an evaluation. That God is not going to look at what we're doing. And this is not meant to scare you off. This is not about being frightened. This is not about trying to scare folks because that doesn't work. That doesn't last. We still do wrong. We've been scared for years. I have been erroneously referring to this process as church vitality. But as I've done more research into, you know what it is? It's really called congregational vitality. Now that's different because the church could be this. The church could mean me. You know, when people say they don't like this church, they don't mean Paul Birkbiggler over there. They say they don't like that church, they might mean a whole lot of things. They might mean the choir, they might mean me, they might mean the ushers. But when you say this means congregational vitality, that means group culpability. That means we have a part, and that's okay. That's not meant to be bad, because if you go to work and everyone says, okay, I want to know your point of view, yours, and you don't get to speak into it, you get an attitude, don't you? Let them call a secret meeting. Be a part of the management team when they call a manager's meeting and you weren't called. Everyone wants to be, and they want to speak into stuff. They want to, even if they don't know what it is, they want to speak into it. In congregational vitality, it means each of us has a part because it leads to societal vitality. I'm going to talk about this in the message today. That it leads to societal vitality. And so I want to put this whole process in the context of what our vitality means to the community. And I want to talk about this through the eyes of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. I said I don't want to scare you, then I start preaching from Revelations. One thing, let me say this before I get into this message. I have an arts team, and we meet to think through how we express the content of our ministry through song, through dance. So we meet together, we try to think, what's the most poignant way to get a message across? How do we appeal with people? How do we use the screen? How do we use PowerPoint? How do we help convey messages about what's happening and what God wants to do? The reason we want to do that is because the church is meant to be a community where lives are changed. This should be some of the most dangerous real estate in Madison. That when you walk into a house of God, you cannot leave the same. You can walk into a theater, into a restaurant, you may be full or entertained, but the church can rock your reality. You can walk into a church and it's telling you to love people you hate. You've been taught to hate. You walk up in the church ready just to cut somebody loose who you mad at, and the church says, no, you took vows. You walk up into the church thinking, this is my money. This is my money. And listen, honestly, as your pastor, I just want you to listen to God about your wallet. Because if God can speak to you and tell you to support a child on the other side of the world, he can tell you to support the destruction of that car wash. Once you start listening to what God tells you about your money, I'm a happy camper. My problem is not just when you don't give here, because chances are if you're not giving here, you're not giving anywhere. My issue is your stewardship, not my paycheck. God's been taking care of me my whole life. My whole life. I was working when y'all met me. But you walk up thinking, this is mine, all of a sudden God just breaks you down. And it'd be different if he tells you to give it to somebody you love, your little sister, your niece, your grandmama. That lady over there, go Bless her. Like, geez, I don't even know her. And she looked like my ex-girlfriend. This is meant to be dangerous. I mean, really, when you get up on Sunday mornings, you ought to say, this is the day the Lord has made. The church is the place. When I say church, I mean the people called out. That's what church means. It's ecclesia. It means the called out, which means we are called to God and called away from something else. That's what makes us a threat to the enemy. If we were merely the same, he wouldn't even care about us. But the fact that we are called out, that when God calls us out, he calls you out of your single way of thinking, your ugly way of thinking. He calls you out of it to himself, but he calls you out with people who are not like you. So he calls you together and then out. And when he calls us out, when he calls us together, we stand against something. I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, but we stand against the world view, the mentality of get your own, be central in your own world. Whatever works for you is cool. Whatever feels good to you, do it. Do it to somebody before they do it to you. All this stuff, we are called to be countercultural. We are called to stand against this. We must understand this. A church that poses no threat to society is not a church. Now, we have taken that to mean something different. It is not merely the political stances that we take. I want to be hated for my love and not hated for my hatred. Think about that. That was really deep. Some of y'all will get that later. Karen, will you tweet that? Because I forgot. That's why y'all got to listen. Y'all think I got all this stuff written down? I want to be hated for what I love and not hated for what I hate. Come on. Eat in the morning. Come here alert. We're called to run and bandage up folks and to serve them, to demonstrate Christ so that when the message of Christ's love comes, they have a visual of God's love. Where some of us have stopped it is thinking, was the church just called just to do good stuff? We are, but we're doing good stuff for God so that people see and understand God's love. We're not called just to be heaven's welcome wagon. We're called to help people to see Christ's love so that it dispels old thoughts they have of Christ. And the church is the place where that countercultural ideology is supported and it is encouraged. Is this making sense to you all? So the book of Revelation, so the church is this place. It's the people of God. It is not Fountain of Life. It's the people of God, the collective people of God who stand against idolatry, who stand against ugliness, who stand against all the isms, who stand against people being beat down and discouraged and taken advantage of. We stand against that and we stand for the love of God. We stand with the powerless. We stand with the broken. That's what the church has done for 2,000 years. The whole selection of Israel and of Abraham, making it seed into the nation is to grasp a small and despised people. God told Israel over and over again, I didn't choose you because you were the best. I chose you because you were the smallest and despised. You must remember that. Small and despised. The church is called to redeem or to find what others have forgotten. So I want to set this up today. I thought I was going to get through a whole lot of this, and right now I'm not so concerned about that as much as I am concerned about helping this sermon in this series to make sense. I'm preaching it because Fountain of Life is on a trajectory. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 7 churches in what's called Asia Minor, near modern-day Turkey. I'm going to talk to you about 7 of those. Pastor Kevin read some of those church names. Some of you have trouble pronouncing it. I do too. But we're looking at them, and I'm going to tell you why in just a few minutes. But Fountain of Life is on a trajectory. Those are regional churches. The church at Ephesus was not one church. There are many little house churches in Ephesus, and they were called the church at Ephesus. There were little ones in the church of Laodicea. It wasn't just the first great amount, things we do to one-up each other, You got a Mount Eagle, greater Mount Eagle. I hope there's no Mount Eagles in here. I just made that up. But greater, first, all these times, try to. They represented a region. This is what I believe. And I'm going to tell you this. This is not out of arrogance. This is just out of being here longer than any other pastors in the pulpit in Madison. I've been doing this longer than any other pastor in any pulpit in this city. Listen. Thank you, but it's not it's not because I didn't try to quit. So it's not because I've been told God I want to do something else. But he just keeps pulling me back to this is what I told you to do. And I started when I was 17. But when I invited pastors from this city to pray over us before we broke ground, and they stood right where we are right now because this was the backyard, and they looked at the belt line, they looked at me. And in this particular prayer meeting, most of these were my white brothers. They said, you are on the southern gate of this city. And what impacts you sets up the city for what God's about to do. We have not prayed for you enough because you are right here on the gate, the south gate of the city, and you need to be here because there are things that you are seeing and praying and warding off on this part of the city. So the reason what we do is really important is because and people say pastors in Madison don't get along. The thing is, we are doing the same thing right now. Right now, my colleagues, my friends who I kick it with, play golf with, laugh and talk with, complain about members with, are doing the same thing right now. They're standing in pulpits right now teaching. We just happen to work the same shift all the time. But there's more collegiality in this community than ever before. I can name pastors and their wives. In 20 years, I couldn't do that, not their wives. And so we are called, many of these pastors are calling to me asking me, talk to me about diversity. I think God's telling us to do it. We don't know how to do that. Talk to us about socioeconomic development or a difference in your church. Talk to us about economic development. I think God's calling us to do this. And so what's happening is there are a lot of things that we're experiencing that we're supposed to expose other churches in the community to, other churches in covenant to, other churches around the community to. I have pastors who come here from all over the country who want to talk about things that we're doing and things that we're learning, particular mistakes that we have made. So what happens here has a profound impact on the church in this community, in our denomination, and abroad. That's not a bragging thing. That comes with a lot of responsibility. Anybody who knows anything about leadership, ooh, you run your own business. You don't even know what that means. Ooh, you're the boss. You don't even know what that means. That means when people call in, you're the one scrubbing toilets. But we are called to have an influence on society. And so when we don't understand our role and our position, society misses the love of God. And so I want to invite you, Fountain of Life, to join the Holy Spirit. Not me, because this is not my task. This is not my job. This is not my ministry. This is ours. This is ours. Part of what we are rebuilding is an old mindset that thought that unless I was here, this couldn't be church. Unless certain people were in certain positions singing certain songs, God wouldn't move. Jessica's a violinist extraordinaire, but she was handling her own on that keyboard. But if we think unless she's on the violin, unless Becca's on the keyboard, unless Ken's on the drum, unless someone's in front of the choir, unless we start thinking God can't move, we miss the whole point. Unless this thing is centered on Jesus Christ only, it's not going to work. And I appreciate the affirmation. I really do. I appreciate the affirmation. I hope I don't offend someone if you're here and you sent this text to me, because I really don't mean to. But I still get texts on Saturday nights. Are you preaching tomorrow? And it makes me want to lie and say, yeah, when I'm not, and no, when I am. Because I don't come for my preaching. Some Sundays, it's the worst part of the service for me. But you all singing about give us your heart, I could have taken off my shoes, gone to communion, did my offering, and went home. I come looking for stuff that other people don't. I come looking, Lord, where are you speaking? I walk through the lower level and I see little children different sizes, shapes, and hues, learning about Jesus together. My heart gets welled up because it was in a little hot room like that at Midvale Baptist Church that Jesus got a hold of my heart as a little second grader. So if this thing is going to really be the community of faith God wants it to be, you must take ownership with me. Because I'm going to tell you something. Before we broke, I'm going to tell you something God told me. And I told my wife, and I told others. I love doing this. And you got to be honest. Let me just be honest for just a minute. If you think that as pastors we don't like the limelight, we are lying. We are. If we say, oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 run. I like being seen. I like being well lit. But some of that stuff that I like gets in your way. And that's why I can't tolerate it. If you all take ownership in where this ministry is going with me right now, we will be a force to be reckoned with. We will be a force to be reckoned with. Part of that's going to be done on October 25th and 26th. When a consultant from our ministry comes for you to tell the truth about what you see at Fountain of Life without my interjection. I'm going to be gagged and tied to a chair. 6 to 9 on Friday night, the 25th. 9 to 12 on the 26th. I need everybody here and 3 or 4 folks you can call to be here. I need at least 50, but I want 75 people. Because you get an opportunity to speak into where we can be. Antoinette, there's some places where you've been, church environment you've been into that you could say, listen, Fountain of Life is rocking, but if we can do just a little bit more of this, where else do you get to say that? And no one's going to say, well, you don't understand. Come and say it. This guy works for my superintendent, so if I get all out the box, I'm in trouble. So I just got to sit there and smile. I'm going to remember your names and faces, but I'm going to sit there that night. No, it's your ministry. You support it with your presence. You built this with your resources. We're in this together. But I need Fountain of Life to say we're taking vitality seriously. Show up with me. We're going to look at where we are. There's 4 quadrants that we're going to look at, and where do we stand, and how do we move from that? It's great resources to help us to develop. It's a way of assessing the church. Does that make sense? Friday night, the 27th, that's a week. That's this Friday. This Friday. It's this Friday and Saturday. We're going to eat at 6. And by this Friday, we're going to work out some child care. I don't know where it is. We're going to work it out. We're going to eat. We're going to work that out too. I went to the Oprah show once. My friend lost like 300 pounds naturally. And she said, this is on our website. And they're like, Oprah, no. They cut to commercial. And she said, oh, well, somebody better design it. We came back in 90 seconds and said, we got the website up. I was like, I didn't know Oprah rolled like that. She did. She had them back there programming. We're going to find some way to do this. Come and speak into the life of this ministry. Because God has been incubating this thing, and it's time to really move ahead. We're called to be dangerous. And we need to do this. There's momentum that God's been talking to us about for a year and a half, and this is not merely for us to be a happening church. It's to influence society. Does this make sense? John, the disciple who Jesus loved, wrote the book of Revelation. It's just one, Revelation. A lot of us say Revelations. Revelation. Used to be called Apocalypse, which means the revealed of hidden things. It's meant to unveil things that are to happen. There is no book in Scripture that we've had more debate over than the book of Revelation. Some said that it was speaking about what's happening in the current current Babylonian Empire. Some said it was talking about what was happening in the Roman Empire. Others said it's a sign of things to come. And it's probably a blend of all of those things. Right now, this is not meant to be a sermon to really set up what Revelations mean, but I will tell you this, regardless of where you stand on that, and this would be a great source for Bible study or book study. The book of Revelation will touch upon four things. The sovereignty of God in Christ Jesus. That regardless of whether it's talking about things that happened 2,000 years ago or things that are going to come, what we love about the book of Revelation is Jesus wins. Second thing you will learn is that the satanic nature of society is trying to rip up the church. Whether that was in the first century church or today, there's an influence that's trying to weaken our voice, and we cannot let it happen. Thirdly, we don't like to talk about this at church, so I want y'all to hear this. It shows us, whether it was at that moment or a little bit later, that there is an inescapable judgment process, whereas the church and society and the world must give an account to God for how it has lived. Now, y'all can get quiet on that one. That's all right. Because we get in trouble about that. Because the repercussions are only scary if you don't do what you're supposed to do. If mama says, sweep the kitchen, I'm going to whoop that tail when I get home. When she's out shopping out the thing, now what shall we do in order to preserve the tail? She didn't say rake the leaves or fold the clothes. So you go in the kitchen and you sweep it. Wouldn't you rather know what mama wants than have her walk in, boom? Go get me something to whoop you with. So listen, Revelation is not scary to those of us who know what God is looking for. He's looking for folks who will submit to the lordship of Jesus Christ. And part of that submission is helping others to come into the knowledge of it. It's not meant to be scary and spooky. It's meant just to let you know how God works so you can get on the Lord's side. Stop making stuff scary that's not supposed to scare you. And it also shows that there's an issue of conflict between the church and the oppressive powers of the world. John was a follower of Jesus. He wrote John's gospel. He was the one who they said loved Jesus. Let me just say this. He was on an island called Patmos, P-A-T-M-O-S. I'll put my notes up later today. And it's a little island in the Aegean Sea, not far from the coast of Turkey. It's in an area that's called Asia Minor. It's really like where Europe and Asia are fusion together. It's called Asia Minor. It's the eastern part of Europe, it's the western part of Asia, and they come together. He writes to 7 churches because it was thought that in that time, around the first century, or maybe the first 60 years after the death of Jesus, it was thought that most organized Christians were living in that part of the world. Not all Christians, because Christians lived everywhere. Remember the day of Pentecost? They came from as far as places in Africa, and they dispersed. You listen to Brother Paul Grant talk, and he brings up this history there. The church was vibrant. In the interior of Africa, not just in the Congo, not just on the western coast, deep into Africa, centuries ago. But he wrote to 7 churches because it was thought that most of the Christians that were organized lived in that region. And the issues he addressed were meant to be universal enough to hit upon places where churches miss their mark. You with me so far? All right, there you go. In this time, the church was under siege. There was an emperor in Rome called Domitian. He ruled from about 81 AD to 96. This man was ruthless, and unlike Nero and unlike Caesar, he was the first of the Roman emperors who said, I must be called Lord and God. He had 2 titles. He is Lord and he is God. Now, to the people in the Roman Empire who wanted money with the emperor's thing on it, who wanted the tax breaks of the emperor, who wanted the pats on the head of the emperor, they said, you know what? You are Lord and you are God. To the church that walked with Jesus, to the church that experienced his power, to the church who saw lame men sitting in front of the temple get up and walk, to the people who had their dead raised to them again, to the women who had been beat down by society, but the church, because of Jesus Christ, put them in positions of prominence, for the people who had died for their cause in Christ, they said, there's only one person who we call Lord and God. And because when you get that title, you don't just want people to call you that. That's not just on your business card. You want a little curtsy or bow. Or I might want your children in your house, or I might want your body. I might want your mind. I might want your property. That once there was an understanding of dominion, that when you call somebody Lord and God, they have say-so over everything you got. Now, the church in 2,000 years ain't got that down yet. Because the fact that we can say Savior and Lord and no in the same breath. The fact that we can say Savior and Lord and wait in the same breath. The fact that we can say Savior and Lord and no, not him, Jesus, shows we don't even understand lordship the way that evil emperor did. He wanted to first put it in your mouth. Say it, Lord and God, because once you do it, it goes to your heart. Then when I tell you to bow or jump or stand or eat or starve or go to jail, no one stands against me because I am Lord and I am God. Now, he might have taken that title because of the way he saw people acting who called God Lord and God. Because in the first century church, folks who called him that were laying down their lives for him, giving their property for him. People who shouldn't be together, people who shouldn't be diverse, people who shouldn't be in the same room were doing this. And he saw the way they were acting. He said, I want to be called Lord and God. John was seen as a leader. And so he was so upset at the church, he threw John into prison on an island called Patmos. It was barren, it was isolated. And on that place, God began to speak. Let me talk to somebody today who feels or who fears hardship and persecution. When the world gets tired of you and puts you on a boat and pushes you out to pasture, God knows how to walk on waters and find your lonely, barren places. When society and circumstances have pushed you homeless, God knows how to sit on a cardboard box. When society has pushed you out to a food line, God knows how to stand and sing in your ear. When society makes you fatherless, God knows how to be a father to you. And when society has made you motherless and choices, when I say society, I ain't talking about nobody, that's the hand that's dealt you. God knows how to speak to your heart and be a mother to you. People whose hearts are broken because you feel pushed aside and nobody understands the trouble you see. You watch that when people are exiled by the faith, God has a way of cozying up to them. When you can't hear nothing else anybody else has to say, he begins to speak. One of the strongest revelations ever given to a human being was to a man who was exiled to an island, sitting by himself, not even knowing if he would come back to his people again, but God began to give him a revelation. Everybody wants a revelation, but nobody wants to be a refugee. Everybody wants a revelation, but nobody wants to be exiled. You want a revelation, but you want to be liked. You want a word from God, but you want to be popular. You want God to speak, but you want to stay busy. Sometimes revelation comes when life is kicking you down, walking on you, stomping on you, beating you down. Do you still want to hear from God? So sometimes he talks on the 6th floor of the hospital where they tuck away the psych patients. Sometimes he talks in divorce court. Sometimes on the food line. Sometimes he talks in your beautiful office. But in those lonely places where they tuck you away because they don't want to see you. What this says to me is that John was a threat. He didn't run with some little militia team. He didn't have arms. He didn't have nuclear arms. He didn't have atomic weapons. But he had a word in his mouth. You could not starve. You could not beat. You could not threaten the word of God up out of John. Listen, when they crucified Jesus, it said the disciple whom he loved and his mother stood there right at the foot of the cross. Do you think John's going to wait until he's an old man to act like he don't know Jesus? He watched him bleed. He watched him die. He heard them say, forgive them, Father. They don't know what they do. He watched that cross shake as heaven shook earth and darkness came over the planet. He watched it when the dead got up out their graves and walked when he died. I'm all right, bro. I'm okay. He saw it. You think he's going to wait till he is old and say, maybe I was seeing things. Maybe it didn't take all of that. I think John was like Caleb, who said, listen, I might have waited 40, 80 years. My mind's unclear right now. How long it was he waited from the promise of the spies until Joshua gave him his land over in Canaan? He said, but I'm as strong as I was the day God gave me the vision. And the day God told me as one of the spies that I would go into the promised land, I've held that thing in my heart. And just because I'm old, I'm not going to forget the promises of God. I know some of you have been waiting a long time. And the book of Revelation is problematic to me because the disciple whom Jesus loved should not have been sent to an island. If you love me, Jesus, you ought to let me dress better than anybody else. If you love me, Jesus, I ought to have more money than anybody else. My children ought to have the best grades if you really love me, Jesus. I ought to have the best marriage and the greatest church if you really love me, Jesus. But it is problematic to me that when everybody else left, the one that stood by Jesus is the one sitting on an island and he's counting who's been killed, who had their head chopped out, and I'm next. And in the face of his own death, he takes out a pen and said, I, John, on the Lord's day was caught up in the Spirit. Snakes and rats and rocks and no food. But you know what? Somewhere Jesus began to feed my soul. Jesus began to extol his name inside of me. No friends, no family. Death is certain. And in the midst of all of this, Jesus shows up on Patmos. Some thought that John might have been delirious. He said, I see somebody whose hair is white like wool and whose feet are bronze. His voice sounds like a trumpet when he talks. It is like the sound of many waters. And though my soul was dying, when he spoke, hi! I knew I was hungry. I knew I was weary. But when I saw him, something knocked me down. But he grabbed me by my collar and said, John, stand up. I need to talk to you. This is not the time for fainting. This is not the time for dying. This is not the time for shaking. I got to talk to the church because it is through the church that I am going to influence the world. Get out your dictation pad, boy, and take note. Oh. Hallelujah. Oh, bless your name. You are worthy, Jesus. Hi. Hallelujah. Don't worry, this isn't preaching. This is just my praise. There have been times I felt like John. There have been times you felt like him. Pushed away, shut down. Maybe your island was an emergency room. Maybe your island was divorce court. Maybe your island was a psych ward. Maybe your island was bankruptcy court. But wherever you found yourself, if you tell the truth, one whose hair is white like wool, whose feet are like burnt bronze. I just want to worship you, Jesus. I just want to worship you, Jesus. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Hey, John saw someone who felt like Lord and God, but he didn't look like Domitian, because Domitian got the title, but the emperor can't save. The emperor's got the title, but he can't raise the dead. The emperor's got the title, but he can't walk on water. Oh, hallelujah. Domitian God, Domitian God, Domitian and God, Emperor God, money God, women God, men God, fame God, career God, wealth God. John turned around as he was talking to him. He saw 7 gold lampstands. Turned around and saw one who looked like the Son of God with 7 stars in his right hand. Lampstands represent the church. The stars represent the angels. Angel, the word angel means messenger. There's still some debate on whether that meant, because John would not write letters to angels. But either that angel either meant the pastor or the bishop of that church, not making them angels, just making them messengers. Or he was calling the church itself an angel. What did angels do in Scripture? They came in dark places and said, "Thus saith the Lord." Mary, I got good news for you. Jacob, I got good news for you. Abraham, I got good news for you. Either way, he's saying something very powerful about the church, that the church is supposed to stand and declare the truth of God in a way that people start taking their shoes off because they want to hear from the Lord. And he said, John, write. Ephesus, you've forgotten your first love. You got the labor right. You endure. When they're trying to kill you, you don't go nowhere. You're not bearing those who are evil. You're testing false prophets. You're hating the needs of all those that are wayward. But let me tell you something. You stop loving God and you stop loving people. Smyrna, you're persecuted. You suffer and you're in poverty. But you got to be faithful under persecution. Stop giving up. Pergamum, you're the compromising church. You keep true to Christ's name, but you allow some of the teachings of the world to come up in your pulpit. This me-centered Christianity, this feel-good centered Christianity. You tell people enough to get their wallet, but you don't tell them enough to get their lives. Got the church standing up talking about more money, more money, more money, while people are dying and hungry. No care for the poor, and we asking God for boats. For what? To send food somewhere where people are hungry? I'm not against boats. Don't listen to me. Don't get me wrong. But if you think God cares about you floating while your neighbor hasn't eaten in 3 days, you got a wrong understanding of who God is. Thyatira, name means white castle. You're the corrupt church. You're corrupt. Yeah, you got love, service, faith, and endurance, but you got a big old temple to Domitian, to the emperor, right in your midst. You serve God on Sundays and you serve money, you serve sex, you serve your stomach, you serve your greed, you serve your fear, you serve your isms, you serve everything else during the week. But on Sunday, you're ready to roll. Sardis, you're the dead church. What he said to Sardis is, wake up. You got a little strength, but you keep God's word. You're not denying Christ's name, but you better hold firm to what you believe. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. You're the faithful church. You got little strength. You keep Christ's word. You're not denying Christ's name, but you better hold when troubles are coming. Laodicea, the lukewarm church. It was known for its hot springs, but the river that would bring it up to them would dry out in the summer. So then they would have this other place that they would have an irrigation system that would bring piped water in. And so when they would bring that piped water in from a cool source, by the time it would come down, it would be impure and it would be lukewarm, and it would make the residents sick. He uses the language of their own city. He said, you know what? You need a hot and a cold. You're like that little putrid water coming through your little raggedy irrigation system. When you drink it, it makes you sick. Your life makes me sick. You're not hot and you're not cold. You're just comfortable. Whatever comes, you with it. Whatever goes, you with it. If it doesn't fit your schedule, you hit the snooze button and sleep a little bit more. If it's outside your price range, I'm not going to help support that. If it's not your song, I'm not going to sing that. If it's not your style, I'm not going to get with that. A consumeristic church cannot win a consumeristic world. There are so many things in life that's not to my liking. But the fact that it means something to someone else, I can be supportive. There are things that I do and I go with because my wife enjoys them. Maybe things she wants to watch or do or go, but I get pleasure that gives her pleasure. A song may not be your style, but I'd minister to you that it's ministering to somebody else. Is that simple enough? That everything does not have to be around me or about me. That if something is not my cup of tea or my song, the fact that somebody's got their hands up and tears are streaming down their face and God is talking to you through it, that means the world to me. Go on and get yours then, LaKendra. Go on in his presence. Because I know how to get in my car and get Jesus. You're neither hot nor cold. It's all about you. And you like this irrigated, putrid-smelling water that when you drink it, it makes you sick. God says, you make me sick. Remember when your mamas and grandmama used to tell you that? And it's not because of how you looked or how you dressed. It's really when you went into the ugly mode. Like if you stole or you found out you cussed somebody out or a teacher, you were disrespectful. It wasn't just because you turned the channel that she was watching. It had to be something really bad to just say, you just make me sick. Sick to my, get out of my sight. I can't even stand to look at you. Now listen, I know y'all think that's mean, but sometimes that avoided the whooping. Sometimes that was the whooping. Why is this important? And I don't know when and where. I got to work this out. But I actually want to go church by church. I want to group them and look at what they did. Because I want to find elements of these churches in us. My goal is not to read this and say, Thyatira, you jacked up. Smyrna, devil church. I want to look at each church and find out where are traces of that in Fountain of Life. And where do we celebrate? Being like Christ. Christ was called to be the witness of God. We were called to be the witnesses of Christ, which means how we conduct ourselves means the world to heaven and the world to the world. No, let me say that sharper. Oh, Karen, get ready to get your thumbs ready. I feel profundity coming. The church, after saying that, I'm going to be like, God's going to trip me out. I'm going to be like, how do I stop? The church that lives out things right means the world to heaven, and it means heaven to the world. When we line up, why do you think the angels rejoice when you convert? Because now you got talents? Because you got the Spirit? You're deep? You think heaven really rejoices because you came to the altar and ran through a box of Kleenex? Heaven rejoices the way a country at war does when someone enlists. We've got another one to stand with us and for us. Heaven rejoices not because you go to church, but because you go to war against the mindset in this world. So when we live up to our purpose, when we are healthy, it means the world to heaven, and it means heaven to the world. That's what we're called to do and become. So what does this mean? It means a couple of things. It means that a church needs a plan of care. And part of what we're doing on Friday and Saturday is to get information so that we begin to put a plan of care together for Fountain of Life. Not just to come, let's eat, and let's just talk about where we are and go home. It's to gather data to begin to put a plan together so that we become that church that means heaven to the world. It also helps me to realize that what we find out in this procedure of making the church healthy will become a tool for evaluation that will allow us to look at our personal lives. We're going to begin working with members, partners, to put a plan together for each individual life. If you dare to sit with us, our coaches, our leaders, our pastors, we want to help to put you on a trajectory that God's called you to. Because although we love evaluation, you always want to know where you are at work. Am I up for a raise? Am I up for a raise? You can come and sit in that seat for 3 years. No one ever challenges you. You may still be doing the same things. The church is called, Fountain of Life is called to prepare people to stand in the face of persecution, love through worship and fellowship, and go and serve the people around us. That's what we're called. We are called to prepare people to stand, love, and go. Here's the challenge. Who is Domitian in our lives? Who's killing the church? And don't worry, I'm putting this all up. Who's asking it to bow? We must stand against the pressures of society the way the 7 churches were told to. And what you hear as a reoccurring theme in Revelation, if the church will hear my voice, I will come and turn this thing around. He said, I'm going to come and take your light out of you. I'm going to come and take your lampstands out if you do not do what I say. It is a serious thing to be the church of Jesus Christ. In fact, many of you might want to rethink this. Because it means a commitment of our entire lives. But Jesus says, to the ones who overcome, to the ones who say yes to me, to the ones who serve with me, I will recognize you before my Father and the angels. In this life, you can be looked over, although you're the best candidate. You can be looked over because you don't have the right name, the right pedigree. So many things you can lack, and you can be looked over. But the God of the universe has an audience with those who have been sold out to the mission of the body of Christ. This is serious. We need to wake up, shake up, ante up, love up, study, and prepare ourselves. If you hear me, I will bring light to you. How do we hear God? In the word and in prayer. That's why we had to knock these doors down on Wednesday nights in Bible study. We're learning Old Testament. You need to knock the doors and get in here. Prayer gatherings this coming week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 6 a.m., 10 o'clock, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. I got new babes in Christ here, but many of you, I'm not seeing. And it's not a guilt thing. If you're praying at home, knock it out the park. I'm saying this is the time to be on the wall. This is the time to be on our faces before God. This is the time to be serious about everything that God is serious about. We're in a season of church checkup because as we walk in health, society changes. Let's bow our heads so I can pray for you.
My best was